Okay, preference center. So, as I'm sure most, if not all of you are doing with your email marketing previously, you have unsubscribes at the bottom or at the top of your email footers. Many of our clients also have preference centers of some ilk around changing your preferences in terms of what type of communications you want to send to. But the preference center needs to evolve, and actually it needs to become something more integrated and more connected with your channels. So the preference center framework that we adopt and use for our clients provides that secure online mechanism, but we'll also talk about how we can do that for offline as well. And it needs to be easy for the consumer and the end customer to use. Both Chris and Mark have mentioned how it needs to be as easy to take away your consent as a customer as it is to give it at the time of your transferring your information. It needs to be able to manage consent and preferences. So am I happy to receive email, telephone, post, but also preferences around what type of communications you want to share. One of our clients, who I'll come on to an example in a moment with Public Health England, have different brands within their organisation. So being able to make sure that you can communicate to the different brands to the customer is as important as well as your specific marketing messages that you want to send. It needs to inform individuals of their rights. So we talk about things like their right to be forgotten, their right to portability. Make sure that that's clear and easily displayed to the customer so they're empowered on that. And it can also be used as an opportunity to capture key variables. So insurance providers, for example, being able to capture renewal dates, being able to use that mechanism to then follow up with communications further down the line. One other area that we've also mentioned with our clients is not just a full-on unsubscribe. When you talk about things like holiday companies, quite often you go on holiday, you come back and you're still in the loop of getting monthly newsletters and promotions. Actually, some customers may want to take a break from those emails, but only for a fixed period. So allowing someone to maybe opt out for 3 to 6 months and then they come back into the fold, as opposed to unsubscribing from all emails and never being able to communicate to those people again. So we mentioned the kind of the preference center as the kind of the visual front end, but actually it needs to be integrated into all of the channels and all of the systems that you have to make sure that when you're asking people to update their details, that it's actually replaying the details that you hold of about them. So bringing in data from your website, your call center, your point of sale, all of those data and all of those systems in together. And being then able to utilize that data. So being able to have better informed decision making about your customers and what they're given their permission to communicate about. Being able to personalize communications, making sure that you're compliant, and being able to optimize and automate some of those communications as well. So I'm going to show a few examples of this being brought to life for the clients that we're currently using. If any of you came to the previous sessions that we've held, we mentioned, and Public Health England kindly came along and did a case study for us. And this is around their preference centre that was actually developed before GDPR was really released. And that actually gave them a good reset point, but also got them ahead of the game in terms of GDPR and communicating to their audiences. Public Health England aren't necessarily known to the end consumer as Public Health England. They're often known as Change for Life, Smoke Free, Stoptober, all of the sub-brands that they communicate to the citizens of England about. And so what they found was the challenge was being able to manage all of their brands and all of their consent through one area. So what we devised is this preference center where they can manage their consent on those brands, but also things around live support, which was around their consent and their marketing permissions, and then being able to unsubscribe from the various different brands as well. So if I show an example of this and how this has then evolved into a re-permission exercise that we're running. If you take, for an example, one particular customer that has said that they're happy to receive direct mail, have opted out to mobile and outbound telephone calls, and that they'd actually seen within the data that the email permission that they captured wasn't going to be compliant with GDPR. So what they did was they've run various communications to people to update their details, to bring in the data from the preference center to automatically update our systems, so then we can communicate to that person if they change their permissions and are happy to receive emails moving forward. For a car manufacturer that we work with, we don't actually hold that preference center. So what we have actually delivered is a widget that therefore calls into the websites that they run and they host via an API, which basically means that we can capture the data in real time, capture their permissions and their changes of consent, bring that back into the SCV that we manage for them, but also send a follow-up communication to them, thanking them for updating their details. One final example here is for, as I say, a pension and life assurance company, and this is where we're utilising direct mail as well as email. So this is actually a re-permission campaign. So the email, as you would expect, has a deep link through to a preference centre so that their boxes are changed based on their preferences. And then the direct mail has a friendly URL so that they don't have to put in https www. And on that communication is also their reference number to act as a verification so that they are who they say they are when they're visiting that website, so that they can then update their details. Not only is it through a website, as we're showing here, but we're also capturing offline responses. So it's sent back to our response centre up in Jarrow, and then it's manually captured. And that's the example side. And now I'm going to hand back to Mark for a summary.